In the emotionally charged 8th episode of Your Friends and Neighbors, titled, When Did We Become These People?, we follow Coop's continuing journey to reclaim what he believes he's lost, his sense of self, authentic connections, and the passion that once defined him. This quest has been central to Coop's character arc throughout the season, making the events of this episode particularly significant as we assess whether he finally achieves the breakthrough he's been seeking. The episode opens with Coop in a reflective mood, staring at old photographs that capture moments from earlier in his life. Times when his smile seemed more genuine, his eyes more alive with possibility. This visual motif beautifully establishes the episode's central question. When did he become the person he is now, so distant from the man in those images? Coop traces the edges of the photographs with a finger, as if trying to physically connect with his former self, suggesting both nostalgia for who he was and determination to recapture that essence. This quest for reconnection manifests most immediately in Coop's decision to organize a boys' night with his longtime friends Nick and Barney. What initially seems like a simple social gathering reveals itself to be something more purposeful, an attempt to recreate the dynamics and authenticity of their earlier friendship, before adult responsibilities and carefully constructed personas created distance between them. Coop approaches this evening with almost desperate optimism, hoping that returning to familiar rituals of male bonding might reawaken aspects of himself that have gone dormant. The boys' night itself unfolds with remarkable emotional depth, moving from surface-level catching up to profound conversations about identity and regret. When Coop finally voices what he's been feeling, remember when we used to talk about stuff that actually mattered? He's not just criticizing their current interaction, but expressing his broader sense of loss. The genuine conversation that follows represents his first tangible step toward reclaiming authentic connection, as all three men lower their guards and acknowledge the gap between who they've become and who they once were or hope to be. What makes Coop's journey particularly compelling is how it balances external actions with internal revelations. He's not just seeking to recover lost friendships or recreate past experiences. He's trying to reconnect with parts of himself that have been suppressed or neglected. During a particularly vulnerable moment at their second bar of the night, Coop admits, "I used to know exactly who I was. When did I become this person who's just going through the motions?" This question echoes the episode's title and encapsulates Coop's central struggle, not just to get back what he's lost externally, but to recognize and reclaim his authentic self. The evening's progression from superficial interaction to meaningful connection parallels Coop's internal journey. As the night unfolds, we witness him shedding layers of the persona he's adopted, responsible, restrained, resigned, to reveal glimpses of the more passionate, spontaneous person beneath. When he challenges Nick about constantly checking his phone, it's not just about demanding attention in the moment, but about rejecting the priority of external obligations over genuine presence, a value he himself has compromised in becoming the person he now is. A pivotal moment occurs when the conversation turns to dreams abandoned or deferred. Coop speaks with surprising emotion about artistic aspirations he once held, creative impulses he gradually suppressed in favor of security and stability. "I used to write every day," he reveals. "When did I decide that didn't matter anymore?" This acknowledgement of specific passions lost helps clarify what Coop is truly seeking. Not just to recapture youthful energy, but to reconnect with creative expression that gave his life meaning. The boys' night culminates in an unplanned visit to their old college hangout, a physical journey to the past that serves as metaphor for their emotional one. In this space laden with memories, Coop experiences his most significant breakthrough. Looking around at the familiar setting with new eyes, he realizes something profound. He can't simply go backward. The nostalgic location helps him understand that reclaiming what he's lost doesn't mean returning to who he was, but integrating those authentic parts of himself into who he is now. This revelation marks Coop's first real progress in a season-long quest. Rather than trying to escape his current life and identity, he begins to see the possibility of transformation within it, of bringing his suppressed passions and authenticity into his present circumstances rather than abandoning them for some imagined return to the past. When he says, maybe it's not about getting back what I lost, but figuring out what to do with what I've found, we witness his first step toward genuine acceptance and integration. While the boys' night represents Coop's most visible effort to reclaim what he's lost, the episode follows him through other aspects of his life as well, allowing us to assess whether this emerging insight translates to broader change. We see him return home with new perspective, approaching his domestic space not as a prison of responsibility, but as a context that could potentially accommodate his authentic self if he were brave enough to express it. A small but significant moment occurs when he retrieves a notebook from a drawer, running his hand over the cover before opening it to begin writing, reconnecting with the creative practice he earlier identified as something lost. Throughout the episode, Coop's journey is contrasted with other characters' struggles with identity and transformation. Felix's attempts to maintain control through manipulation of shared history represents a darker version of engagement with the past. Mel and Sam's relationship conflict highlights the consequences of growing apart without conscious attention to who they're becoming individually and as a couple. These parallel narratives emphasize that Coop's quest isn't unique, but part of a universal human experience of evolution and the challenge of maintaining authenticity through life's changes. By the episode's conclusion, has Coop finally gotten back what he lost? The answer is both yes and no, and this nuanced resolution is what makes the storyline so compelling. He hasn't magically transformed back into his younger self, or escape the responsibilities and compromises that adulthood entails. In that sense, what was lost remains lost. The carefree existence and unlimited potential of youth cannot be fully recaptured. However, Coop has reclaimed something perhaps more valuable: clarity about what matters to him and the beginnings of a path toward integrating those values into his current life. He's recovered authentic connection with his friends, reestablishing a space where genuine conversation can happen. He's reconnected with creative impulses long suppressed, taking concrete steps to reincorporate them into his routine. Most importantly, he's begun to reconcile who he was with who he is, moving toward integration rather than escape or regression. The episode's final scene shows Coop sitting at his desk late at night, writing in the notebook we saw him retrieve earlier. The house is quiet. His responsibilities haven't disappeared, but he's carved out space within them for something authentic and meaningful. As he pauses to read what he's written, a small smile forms. Not the exuberant grin of his younger self from the photographs, but something more subtle and hard-won. This image perfectly captures the episode's message about identity and transformation. We don't get back what we lose exactly as it was. We create something new that honors both who we were and who we've become. This resolution avoids the simplistic narrative of total recovery or complete reinvention. Instead, it presents a more realistic and ultimately more hopeful vision of how we might address the universal experience of looking at our lives and wondering, when did I become this person? Coop doesn't escape this question, but begins to transform it from a lament about loss to an opportunity for integration and growth. What makes Coop's journey particularly resonant is how it acknowledges the complexity of adult identity. He doesn't abandon his responsibilities or current relationships in pursuit of some idealized past self. Rather, he begins to see how aspects of that earlier authenticity might enrich his present life rather than replacing it. This nuanced approach recognizes that we all contain multitudes, that the passionate dreamer and the responsible adult can coexist within the same person if we're brave enough to embrace this complexity. The episode also suggests that reclaiming what we've lost often requires community rather than isolated effort. Coop's breakthrough doesn't happen through solitary reflection, but through vulnerable connection with friends who've known him across different phases of his life. They serve as witnesses to who he's been, mirrors reflecting aspects of himself he's forgotten, and companions in the shared experience of evolution and occasional disorientation. This communal dimension of identity work reflects the show's broader exploration of how relationships shape and reflect who we become. By the time the credits roll, we understand that Coop's journey isn't complete. It's ongoing, as all authentic growth must be. He hasn't fully resolved the tension between who he was and who he's become, but he's taken meaningful steps toward a more integrated and conscious identity. He's moving from passive acceptance of his transformation to active participation in it, from lamenting what's lost to creating something new that honors its essence. In this sense, the episode offers a profound meditation on the nature of loss and recovery. Some things, once lost, cannot be regained in their original form. Youth, unlimited possibility, certain relationships. But their essence, authenticity, passion, meaningful connection, can be reclaimed and integrated into our evolving identities if we're willing to do the difficult work of honest reflection and deliberate change. Coop's journey in this episode ultimately suggests that the question, when did we become these people, doesn't necessarily demand a return to who we were before. Instead, it invites us to recognize the ongoing nature of becoming, to see identity not as something fixed that can be lost and recovered, but as a continuing process we can engage with more or less consciously. By the episode's end, Coop hasn't gotten back exactly what he lost, but he's reclaimed something perhaps more valuable: agency in who he's becoming. This nuanced resolution avoids both the fantasy of complete recovery and the cynicism of permanent loss. Instead, it offers a vision of growth that acknowledges both continuity and change, both grieving what's past and creating what's possible. Coop's small smile as he writes in his notebook captures this perfectly, a moment of recognition that while he can't return to who he was, he can bring forward what mattered most about that earlier self into who he's still becoming. In answering whether Coop finally got back what he lost, the episode ultimately reframes the question itself. Perhaps what matters isn't recovering what was lost, but discovering what remains possible. Not returning to who we were, but becoming more fully who we are. Through Coop's journey, Your Friends and Neighbors offers this more complex and ultimately more hopeful vision of human transformation. Not a circle back to the beginning, but a spiral that carries forward what's essential while continuing to evolve.